I never thought my own children would look at me like I was a burden, but that morning, that exact moment, I realized everything had changed. It was a Sunday. I stood in my own living room, the same room where I had raised my children, fed them, taught them, protected them, yet suddenly I felt like a stranger. My daughter, Sana, crossed her arms and rolled her eyes. "Dad, nobody wants your old junk. Just sell the house and move into a smaller place. Why are you being so old-fashioned?" Old-fashioned, that was the word she used. Like I was outdated, like I was a problem. My son, Farhan, didn't even look up from his phone. "Seriously, Dad, you're holding on to useless antiques. They're worth nothing. Just sign the papers. Let us handle everything." Sign the papers. That was the real reason they both came. Not to visit me, not to ask how I was doing, not to spend time with their aging father. They came because they wanted control over my house, my land, my belongings, everything I had built with a lifetime of hard work. I looked at the documents in my son's hand, property transfer papers already filled out. My signature was the only thing missing. Sana spoke again, this time louder, harsher. "Dad, you're not thinking clearly anymore. Let younger people handle things. Times have changed. You can't just sit with your old clocks and wooden boxes and pretend life is the same." Those old clocks had once paid for her college. Those wooden boxes were older than her entire generation. But in that moment, none of it mattered, because the children I raised with love now saw my life's memories as garbage. I felt something break inside me. Not anger, not sadness, something deeper. A wound that only betrayal can create. I didn't sign the papers. Instead, I told them to leave. They left the house laughing, mocking me as they walked out the door. "Dad will never change," Farhan scoffed. "He still thinks his old collection is valuable," Sana said. "Poor guy." That night, I opened the locked cabinet they had always ignored. Inside it was the truth they never knew, pieces of history collected over decades. What they thought was worthless was worth $12 million, and that was just the beginning. I began noticing the silence first. Not the peaceful kind, not the gentle quiet that comes from a home full of memories, but a cold silence. The type that makes you feel unwanted in the very place you built with your own hands. My children had once filled this house with noise, footsteps running across the hallway, doors slamming, laughter echoing through every room. But now, weeks would pass, and I wouldn't see either of them. Sana used to call me every night when she was in college. After marriage, the calls turned into once a week, then once a month. Then sometimes she only called when she needed something. Farhan used to help me in the workshop when he was younger. Now, he barely visited unless his wife pushed him to check on the old man. Even when they visited, they didn't stay. Sana would glance around like she was inspecting a museum she didn't belong to. Farhan would sit on the couch, scrolling through his phone, barely looking up. Their spouses weren't any different. Sana's husband, Adnan, acted like he was doing me a favor by stepping into my home. He always eyed the antique collection with suspicion, as if every piece was hiding gold inside it. And Farhan's wife, Mira, she never hid her dislike for the old-fashioned decor. One day, as I was dusting my antique gramophone, I overheard her whispering to Farhan in the corridor, "Your father needs to live in a modern place. This old house is depressing, and who's going to deal with all this? Junk. When he's gone. Junk." That word cut me deeper than she knew. My antiques weren't random items. Each one had a story, a memory, a piece of my life, but they never asked about them, never cared. They saw what I had collected for decades as clutter, as a burden. I began feeling like an outsider in the home I had built brick by brick. My friend Shabir, who lived 2 streets away, noticed the change in my mood. "You look tired," he said one evening as we had tea together. I sighed. "Maybe I'm getting old." "No." He replied firmly, "You're hurt, and that's different." He was right, but the real hurt wasn't the silence. It was the disrespect that slowly began replacing love. And I knew something was shifting, something dark. It started with small comments. "Dad, you should think about moving somewhere smaller. Why are you still keeping this old place? It's too big for you. Modern homes are easier to manage." At first, I thought they were being practical. But soon the tone changed from advice to pressure, from pressure to demand. Sana walked around my living room one day, tapping the wooden furniture as if she was checking its expiry date. "Dad, this house is outdated. No one lives like this anymore. Sell it. move somewhere modern. Farhan chimed in, and what's the point of keeping all these antiques? They're just taking up space. The world is moving on. You should too. I didn't respond. Instead, I watched them really watch them, and there it was. Irritation, impatience, and something else. Greed. They weren't concerned about me. They were concerned about the property. Sana's husband, Adnan, had recently invested in a business that wasn't doing well. Mira hinted that Farhan was struggling with loan payments. Suddenly, it all made sense. They wanted the house. They wanted control. They wanted the inheritance early. One afternoon, I found them in my study. They weren't even hiding it anymore. Sana held one of my antique clocks, examining it with annoyance. "What's even the point of keeping these?" she said. "Sell them. At least then we can use the money for something important." I stepped into the room quietly. "Important for who?" I asked. She froze, then forced a smile. "We just want what's best for you, Dad." Funny how what's best for me always matched what's convenient for them. My heartbeat grew heavy. I could feel a storm building, like something was coming, something big. And I wasn't wrong. A week later, the pressure turned into confrontation. They didn't come to visit. They came with a plan, one that would try to strip me of everything. I was in the workshop polishing an antique pocket watch when I heard car doors slam. Not one but two. Both of my children had arrived together. That never happened unless something serious was coming. They walked in without greeting me, no smile, no warmth, just determination on their faces. Farhan held a folder. Sana looked tense. "Dad," Farhan began, "we need to talk." I felt a chill run through me. "What is it?" Sana took a deep breath. "We found a perfect apartment for you. It's small, modern, easy to maintain. You can move there next month." I stared at her. "Who said I'm moving?" Farhan opened the folder and placed a set of documents on the table. Transfer of ownership, my house, my land, everything. My signature was the only thing missing. "Dad," Farhan said firmly, "this is better for everyone. You can't manage this house anymore." "And what if I don't sign?" I asked. Sana's voice cracked into anger. "Don't be difficult. You're being stubborn. Times have changed. You can't stay stuck in your old ways. Old ways, old man, old-fashioned." That was all I was to them now. "I'm not signing anything," I said quietly. Farhan's jaw clenched. "You have to." "No." I repeated. "I don't." Sana slammed her hand on the table. "Why are you so attached to useless things? These antiques, this house, none of this has value anymore." I looked at them, really looked, their impatience, their entitlement, their assumption that everything I owned would one day belong to them, and a strange calm washed over me. Without a word, I walked to the corner of the room and unlocked a wooden cabinet that neither of them had ever bothered to check. Inside were dozens of velvet-wrapped pieces, old watches, rare coins, signed historical items, a collection older than them. They stared in confusion. What is all this?" Farhan asked. I looked back at them with a quiet, steady voice. "The truth," I said, but the real truth, the one that would turn their lives upside down, wasn't inside that cabinet. It was hidden in a place they didn't even know existed. My children stared at the cabinet, expecting an explanation, maybe even expecting me to break down and hand things over. But they didn't know the truth. They only saw what was in front of them. What they didn't know was what was behind. I slid the cabinet gently to the side. A faint scraping sound echoed in the room. Sana frowned. Farhan stepped closer. "Dad, what are you doing?" he asked. I didn't answer. Instead, I bent down and pressed my thumb onto a small wooden panel built into the wall. A click sounded soft yet sharp, and a narrow door released. Their eyes widened. A hidden room, a room they had walked past their entire lives and never noticed. "Dad, what is this?" Sana whispered. I pushed the door open, and a soft golden glow spilled across the floor. Inside, shelves lined the walls from top to bottom. Glass cases held objects wrapped in silk. Lamps illuminated wooden chests carved with patterns so old even I couldn't trace their full history. "This," I said quietly, "is the room you never cared to ask about." I stepped inside, my children trailing behind me like strangers entering a forbidden place. On the shelves rested items I had collected over 40 years, pieces handed to me by historians, travelers, collectors, and a mentor who trusted me more than his own family. There was the 1796 pocket chronometer from an old British naval officer, a hand-painted Mogul miniature from the 1600s, a first edition Persian manuscript with gold leaf on its edges, rare coins that had passed through empires, an untouched gramophone with the original horn. Each piece wasn't just valuable, it carried a story, a life, a heartbeat. Farhan whispered, This looks expensive. For once, you're right, I replied. I could see their faces changing, the arrogance dissolved. Their eyes darted across the shelves like predators who suddenly smelled prey. But this room wasn't built to impress them. It was built to protect history and to protect me. Because years ago, my mentor, Ustad Karim, one of the most respected antique collectors in South Asia, had warned me. People don't betray you when you're weak. They betray you when they think you have something worth taking. And now my children knew I had something worth taking. They looked shocked, but their shock wasn't the biggest surprise waiting for them, because they still didn't know the value. They had no idea the number that would change everything. After my children left that evening, their faces pale with confusion, frustration, and something dangerously close to greed, I locked the secret room again. I didn't sleep that night, not because I was scared, but because I knew the time had come. For years, I avoided getting the full appraisal done, not because I didn't trust the value, but because I didn't want the temptation to spread. Money brings vultures, and my children were beginning to circle like ones. So the next morning, I called someone I had not spoken to in a long time, Asher Siddiq, a world-renowned antique expert, an old friend of my mentor. Asher, I said softly when he picked up, I need you to look at my collection. There was a pause on the line. Then a slow, serious reply. Is it time? Yes, I said. It's time. He arrived 2 days later. A tall man with sharp eyes hidden behind round spectacles. Asher walked into the secret room with the silent reverence of a worshiper entering a holy place. For hours he examined every piece, measured weights, checked engravings, used magnifying lenses, opened old manuscripts with careful hands. My heart beat slowly as he worked. Not because I was nervous about the value, but because this was the first time anyone in decades had touched these memories with respect. At one moment, he paused at a small velvet box. Inside was an ancient silver compass from the early Ottoman era. He whispered, Do you know what this is worth? I shook my head. I never asked. His voice trembled. This alone could change a man's life. Sana and Farhan would have fainted if they heard that. After nearly 5 hours, Asher placed all his notes into a folder. Sit, he said firmly. I sat. He looked at me with eyes that held both awe and disbelief. My friend, your collection is one of the rarest private collections I've seen in South Asia. I swallowed. And the value? He took a deep breath, then slid the appraisal paper across the table. I unfolded it slowly, line after line, item after item, valuations that didn't seem real, and then the total at the bottom, $12,487,000. I exhaled sharply. He nodded. Your mentor chose wisely when he trusted you. This collection is a national treasure. But the treasure came with danger, and Asher knew it too. He leaned forward and lowered his voice. You must be careful. If your children know the value, they will come for it. I looked down at the paper. My children already suspect something. I admitted. Asher's expression darkened. Then you need to protect yourself immediately. 2 days after the appraisal, my lawyer, Advocate Hanif, called me unexpectedly. His voice was tense, far more tense than usual. Uncle, I need to speak with you urgently. Please come to my office today. I didn't ask questions. I just went. When I arrived, he closed the blinds and locked the office door. That alone told me something was wrong. Uncle, he began slowly. I need you to stay calm. Something has happened. He slid a stack of documents across his desk. I opened them. My heart froze. It was a legal inquiry filed by my own children. They had attempted to declare me mentally unfit to manage my own property. I stared at the papers, unable to breathe. This can't be real. Hanif nodded grimly. They want court permission to take full control of your assets. They claim you're forgetful, stubborn, irrational, and incapable of making financial decisions. Forgetful. Stubborn, irrational, these were the words my own children used about me. Hanif continued, they have submitted statements from their spouses. Even neighbors were approached for signatures. I felt like the floor beneath me cracked open. My children weren't just being greedy, they weren't just disrespectful, they were trying to legally erase my authority. While I was still alive, and Uncle, Hanif added, they scheduled a hearing soon. My hands shook. Why would they do this? Hanif sighed. I think they believe you're hiding the value of something. Maybe they saw something, maybe they sensed it. Of course they did. They saw the room, they saw the antiques. They knew, or at least suspected, that I was hiding wealth. Hanif leaned closer. You need to act before they do. If you don't protect yourself, they could seize everything. What should I do? I asked, my voice cracking for the first time. He gave a sad smile. Uncle, it's time to take back control. Take back control. Those words echoed in my chest, stirring something inside me, something wounded, but undefeated. I wasn't weak. I wasn't confused. I wasn't incapable. I was betrayed. But betrayal does something powerful. It forces you to stand up. Hanif placed a new set of documents in front of me, documents that would change the battle entirely. Sign these, Uncle, and trust me. Your children won't know what hit them. 2 days after I signed the legal documents, Hanif prepared documents that protected my assets and secured all ownership under my exclusive authority. I received a message from Sana. Dad, we need a family meeting tonight. It's important. Important. That word had become a warning more than a request. When they all arrived, Sana, Farhan, and their spouses, they sat in my living room like judges waiting for the accused. Not one hug, not one smile, just stiff backs, tight jaws. A silent expectation that I would bow to their demands. Farhan cleared his throat. Dad, we heard you've been meeting with lawyers. Sana folded her arms. Why? Planning something without telling us. Planning something. They were the ones filing petitions behind my back. I met with my lawyer because you tried to take control of my property. I answered calmly. Sana's face flushed. We only did that because you're making irrational decisions, you're hiding things, you're collecting junk and refusing to let us help you. Help, I repeated. You came with transfer papers. Mira jumped in with a voice full of poison. Any responsible family would do the same. You're old, you need guidance. Guidance. I laughed bitterly, or control. Adnan raised his voice. You have responsibilities. You can't just keep things to yourself. We're your children. This house will belong to us someday, so why not let us manage it now? There it was, the truth, finally said aloud. Farhan leaned forward. Dad, we know you're hiding valuable items. Why else would you lock rooms and act so secretive? Just tell us the worth. Sana's voice rose an octave. Why can't you trust your own children? I looked at them for a long moment. Their expressions weren't of worry or love, only entitlement. I trusted you. I said softly, until you tried to take my life out of my own hands. Silence, heavy, suffocating. Then Farhan slammed his hand on the table. Dad, enough. We demand transparency. We deserve to know what we will inherit. The word deserve rang in my ears like a slap. Deserve. They thought inheritance was a birthright, not a privilege. Not something earned through respect or love. I leaned back, folded my hands, and gave them a long, steady look. You want transparency? I asked. They nodded eagerly. Fine. I said, you'll have it. I'll show you exactly what my collection is worth. Their eyes widened in triumph. They thought they had won. They had no idea what was coming. The next morning, I planned to reveal the appraisal letter, but something happened before I even got the chance. I woke up to strange noises. Footsteps, whispers, the sound of metal scraping. I rushed toward the hallway, and my heart dropped into my stomach. Farhan and Adnan were trying to break into the secret room. A crowbar was wedged against the wooden frame. Sana stood behind them, holding a flashlight as if they were exploring an abandoned cave instead of their father's home. What are you doing? I shouted. They froze like thieves caught red. Handed, Farhan swallowed. Dad, don't overreact. We just wanted to take a look. With a crowbar. I shot back. Sana stepped forward with a voice dripping in fake calm. Dad, you're being paranoid. We know you're hiding things inside. We're just trying to help organize. I thundered. Or steal. My words sliced through the room. They didn't deny it. Mira, who had just come inside, folded her arms. Well, what did you expect? You've been acting suspicious. You forced us to do this. Forced. They were blaming me for their attempt to break in. Farhan's voice cracked. Dad, you think we're fools? We know something valuable is inside. Why else keep a hidden room? I stared at them, the children I raised now standing in my home like invaders. You didn't even ask. I whispered. You didn't talk. You didn't trust. You went straight to breaking in. Sana's eyes flashed with frustration. Because you weren't telling us anything. You're making us look like outsiders in our own house. Maybe. I said quietly, because that's how you've been treating me. She rolled her eyes. Dad, stop being dramatic. Just open the door. I stepped between them and the secret room. No. Farhan gritted his teeth. Why are you being so stubborn? This is our future. No. I repeated, this is my past, my life, my collection, and my decision. The room fell silent again. Until Adnan muttered under his breath, we should have taken the legal route sooner. That line broke something inside me. I realized then that their betrayal was complete. There was no misunderstanding, no confusion, no miscommunication. They had chosen greed over me. I walked past them, ignoring their angry whispers, and headed straight to my study. If they wanted answers, if they wanted to see the truth, then I would show them, but not in the way they expected. That evening, after the failed break-in, I called them back to the living room. They gathered reluctantly, each wearing a different mask: anger, guilt, impatience. I didn't speak right away. Instead, I placed a sealed envelope on the table. What's that? Farhan asked. You wanted transparency. I said, this is the full appraisal of my antique collection. Their eyes widened. Sana leaned forward. So you admit it's valuable? Yes. I nodded. More valuable than you ever imagined. I slid the envelope toward them. Sana snatched it instantly and ripped it open. I watched their faces as they read. Farhan blinked rapidly as if words were dancing. Sana's lips parted, but no words came out. Mira's hand flew to her mouth. Adnan nearly fell back into the sofa. $12,487,000. They read it again and again. Farhan finally whispered, Dad, this can't be real. This says 12 million. 12,487,000. I corrected. Sana's voice trembled. Dad, why didn't you tell us? I looked at them, feeling a strange mix of sadness and clarity. Because you didn't care when you thought it was worthless. Silence. You insulted it. You insulted me. You tried to take my home. You tried to have the court declare me mentally unfit. You tried to break into a room you had no right to enter. Their heads lowered in shame or maybe panic. I leaned forward, and now that you know its value, suddenly you care. Sana's eyes welled up. Dad, we're sorry and no. I cut her off. You're sorry because you saw the number. Farhan stepped in quickly. Dad, come on. We're family, and family shares things, right? You raised us to take responsibility. I laughed sharply. You came into my house with a crowbar. Sana tried again, her voice turning soft and sugary. Dad, we can help manage everything. We can take care of it for you. No, I said calmly. You already showed me what you do with control. Their faces fell. Then I delivered the truth that crushed every last trace of entitlement in the room. I've already taken legal action to protect my assets. Everything is under my sole authority now. You cannot touch the collection. You cannot claim the house. You cannot make decisions for me. Sana looked like she'd been slapped. Farhan's face turned red with fury. Mira muttered, this is unbelievable. But I wasn't done. I stood up, straightened my back, and said, and one more thing, your behavior in the past weeks has forced me to reconsider my will. Their heads snapped up instantly. What does that mean? Farhan asked, fear leaking into his tone. It means, I said slowly, that inheritance is no longer guaranteed. Silence fell like a hammer. This family, I continued, has forgotten respect, and I will not reward greed. Their breaths quickened. The fear in their eyes was something they had never felt before. After the confrontation, the house fell into an uncomfortable quiet, not the painful silence from before, but a meaningful one. The kind of silence that comes right before a storm breaks, or right before a man starts rebuilding his life. For the first time in weeks, I slept peacefully. because now I knew what needed to be done. The next morning, I called Asher, the antique expert. His voice carried warmth and respect, something I hadn't felt in a long time. "Asher," I said, "I'm ready to sell." He didn't hesitate. "I'll arrange private collectors. These items deserve respectful owners, not auctions full of vultures." In the following weeks, collectors from around the world came quietly: historians, museum buyers, preservationists, private curators. Each buyer entered my secret room with reverence, not greed. One collector, an elderly French historian, held a Mogul miniature painting with tears in his eyes. "This belongs in a place where it will be cherished," he said. I nodded. That was enough for me. Piece by piece, the collection found homes across the world. The Ottoman compass sold first $7, 120 0, euro 0. The manuscript $1, 1 million. The naval chronometer $9, 140 0, euro 0. The gramophone $3, 180 0, 00. Rare coins $2. 5 million collectively. Every sale felt like closing a chapter of my past and opening a door to a future I never imagined. But while I was experiencing relief, my children were spiraling. Every time a collector's car arrived, Sana and Farhan would appear at the gate with suspicion written across their faces. "Why are these people here? You're selling everything without telling us. How can you do this to your own family?" Family, they remembered that word now when money was involved. But I didn't explain anything. I didn't fight. I didn't justify. I simply said, "It's my collection, my decision." Their anger grew. But so did my peace. For the first time in years, I felt in control of my life again. And the more I sold, the lighter I felt, not because of the money, but because the weight of their expectations was finally gone. But selling the antiques was only step one. Step two was going to hurt them far more. When I entered Advocate Hanif's office the next morning, he stood up immediately. "Uncle, I had a feeling you'd come today." "I'm ready," I said. "Let's rewrite everything." He closed the door, took out a fresh file, and gestured for me to sit. "Tell me what you want," he said. I took a deep breath. "I want my assets protected. I want my decisions respected. And I want my children to understand that inheritance is not a prize for entitlement." He nodded. We spent hours working through the details. My house, my land, my savings, and now the millions from the antique sales. Hanif listened carefully as I outlined my wishes. A trust fund locked with strict conditions. Mandatory respect clauses: no legal claim unless they maintain a healthy relationship with me. A humanitarian donation, a portion set aside for schools and orphanages. Support for the loyal people in my life: Shabir, the friend who stood by me, my driver, my caretaker. Hanif worked quickly, drafting every clause with precision. "This will ensure no one can manipulate you again," he said. I felt a heavy weight lift from my shoulders, but while we were finishing the paperwork, my phone buzzed repeatedly. Calls from Sana, then Farhan, then their spouses. 10 missed calls in 30 minutes. Hanif raised an eyebrow. "Problems at home." I sighed. "They must have found out I'm selling more antiques today." Hanif leaned back. "Then they will soon find out about this will too. Are you ready for that battle?" For the first time, I answered confidently, "Yes." Because this wasn't revenge, this was boundaries, a lesson they needed. 2 hours later, the new will was complete and legally registered. Hanif smiled warmly. "Uncle, you just rewrote your future." On the drive home, I felt lighter than I had in decades, like I had reclaimed my dignity. But when I reached the gate, I saw both my children waiting, faces dark, eyes filled with accusation. They rushed toward my car. "Where have you been?" Sana yelled. "You're meeting lawyers again," Farhan demanded. This time, I didn't cower or defend. I simply looked them both in the eyes and said, "That's none of your concern anymore." Their stunned expressions told me everything. I was finally free. The morning after the will was finalized, I sat on the veranda sipping tea. For the first time in ages, I felt calm. Then my phone rang. It was Shabir, and he sounded worried. "Your son was at the bank," he said quietly. "He was asking questions about your accounts, loud questions, angry questions." I closed my eyes, so the consequences had begun. Within hours, Farhan stormed into the house. "You changed the will, didn't you?" he shouted. I didn't answer. He paced the living room like a restless animal. "This is madness. You're ruining everything. We're your children. Children don't break into rooms, I said calmly. Children don't try to take legal control of their father's property. He froze. You think we're greedy? He asked, his voice trembling. I think you forgot respect, I replied. He looked down, jaw tight, eyes burning with frustration but not remorse. An hour later, Sana arrived too. Her eyes were red from crying or from fury, I couldn't tell. Dad, she said, trying to sound soft, we made mistakes, but you're being extreme. Extreme, I echoed. After everything you tried to do behind my back. She opened her mouth to argue, but I raised my hand. You both crossed lines that should never be crossed. I won't reward betrayal, not anymore. Farhan stepped forward, voice rising again. So what now? You'll just cut us off, throw us away? No, I said firmly. But I will protect myself and my decisions. They stared at me, stunned as if they were seeing me for the first time. You taught us to be strong, Sana whispered. And now, I replied, I'm teaching you the meaning of consequences. They left the house in silence, not the cold silence from before, but a heavy, defeated silence. That evening, Shabir came over. You did the right thing, he said, placing a comforting hand on my shoulder. Maybe, I whispered, but it still hurts. He shook his head. Some lessons hurt both the teacher and the student. As night fell, the house felt peaceful, but the peace didn't last long. Because the next day, I received a message from my daughter, a message that made my hands tremble. Dad, we need to talk again. This time, please listen. We made a mistake. For a moment, hope flickered inside me. Maybe they had finally understood, but I had no idea what was coming next. After everything that happened, the lies, the signatures they tried to force onto me, the humiliation of being called old-fashioned, I finally stepped into a version of life I never thought I'd get to experience. A life that wasn't built around my children's moods. A life not shaped by their demands, guilt trips, or their never-ending warnings about how I was too old to manage anything alone. For the first time in years, I woke up without tension in my chest. No criticism, no shouting. No one barging into my home telling me what decision I should make next. Just peace. I started traveling again, the way I once dreamed of before life became heavy. I visited old cities whose buildings were older than my antiques. I walked slowly without rushing, listening to languages I didn't understand but still found beautiful. I tasted new food, met strangers who laughed easily, and learned that the world didn't end outside my front door. It began there. I picked up hobbies I abandoned decades ago. Painting, collecting postcards from every city, early morning bird watching from my balcony. For the first time, I wasn't doing anything to prove a point. I wasn't trying to make my children proud. I wasn't trying to impress society. I was simply living. I made new friends too. People who liked me for who I was, not for what I owned. A retired librarian who loved talking about old music. A couple from my travel group who treated me like family without expecting anything in return. A young antique restorer who said he learned more from one conversation with me than from a year of classes. These people saw me, not my money, not my collection, not my past, just me, and that feeling. After a lifetime of giving and being taken for granted. Felt like sunlight after a long winter. But peace never lasts forever. Not when you have family who believes you owe them everything. Not when greed is still breathing somewhere in the background. And one quiet morning, as I was returning from a trip, suitcase in hand, heart still full from the journey, I found someone waiting at my doorstep, someone I didn't expect, someone who wasn't supposed to know I was back. My son with red eyes and a shaky voice, Dad, we need to talk. I stood there, the key still in my hand, looking at my son like he was a ghost from a life I had already walked away from. He swallowed hard. Please, just give me 5 minutes. I didn't speak. I simply nodded and opened the door. He stepped inside the house he once said I was too old to handle. The house he wanted me to sign away. The house where he and his wife once shouted at me, telling me to stop living like a fossil. He looked around like he didn't recognize anything. Maybe. He didn't recognize me anymore. We sat in the living room. He didn't touch anything. He just stared at his hands, twisting his fingers, trembling slightly. Dad, I'm sorry, he finally whispered. I didn't move. I had waited years. Decades for those words. But when they finally came, they didn't feel like healing. They felt suspicious. For what? I asked quietly. He flinched. For everything. He said, voice cracking. For how we treated you. For trying to take the house. For mocking your antiques. For choosing money over you. For everything. Tears rolled down his cheeks. Part of me softened. Another part stayed guarded. Greed makes people clever actors. He continued, when I saw the news about your antique sale. The $12 million. I realized how horribly wrong we were. You weren't old-fashioned. You weren't outdated. You were wiser than all of us. There it was, the money. It always came back to the money. I leaned back. Are you apologizing because you hurt me? Or because you didn't get anything from the sale? He froze. Total silence. He didn't answer. He didn't have to. His eyes spoke the truth he didn't want to say. Then came the words that stabbed deeper than betrayal. Dad, we're struggling. My business is failing. The house mortgage is killing us. We need help. Ah. There it was, the real reason. Not guilt, not regret, not love, need. And suddenly, my daughter stepped into the doorway. She had been hiding outside, listening. Her makeup was smudged, her eyes swollen. We're sorry, Dad, she said softly. We know we hurt you. We know we didn't deserve anything. But please, don't leave us behind. 2 children, 2 apologies, 2 broken voices. But were they broken because of guilt or because of debt? I looked at both of them, their eyes. I couldn't tell if they were honest, and then my daughter whispered something that changed everything. Dad, there's something we didn't tell you. Her words hung in the air like a slow-moving storm. There's something we didn't tell you. I waited. My daughter stepped forward, shoulders shaking. It wasn't just us, she said. It was our spouses. They pushed us. They convinced us you were too old. They told us we deserved your property, your antiques, your house. They made it seem normal to take advantage of you. My heart tightened. Blaming the in-laws, classic escape route, but something about her expression, something fragile, something ashamed, looked different this time. My son looked down, ashamed. We let people influence us, Dad. We let greed blind us. We let ego destroy everything. Silence. A heavy, suffocating silence. I took a deep breath. I can forgive you. I said slowly, but I can't forget what happened. Not yet. Forgiveness is earned, not requested. Their eyes lifted with a small, trembling hope. But listen carefully. I continued. Money can be earned again. Houses can be rebuilt. Collections can be sold. But respect, once it is broken, is the hardest thing in the world to restore. Their faces fell. Realization finally dawned. I stood up. You didn't lose my inheritance, I said. You didn't lose my antiques. You didn't lose my money. They swallowed hard. You lost my trust. Their shoulders collapsed. I stepped closer. If you want to rebuild this family, truly rebuild it, then start with honesty, start with kindness, start with showing me, not telling me, that you've changed. They nodded slowly, tears flowing again. For the first time in years, their voices didn't sound entitled. They sounded human. I didn't promise them money. I didn't promise them inheritance. I didn't promise anything except one truth. I'm willing to talk, but trust will take time. I walked them to the door. They hugged me, hesitant, unsure, but real. As they left, I felt something strange. Not anger, not victory. Closure. A door didn't close that day. A window opened, a small one, a fragile one. But sometimes, a small window is the beginning of a new sky. Before they got into the car, my daughter turned back. Dad, do you think we deserve another chance? I looked at her for a long moment. You deserve a chance, I said, but not because of money, because you're my children. Her lips trembled into a relieved smile. And as they drove away, I whispered the final truth that had shaped my entire journey. Respect matters more than money, and now they know it too.